Here are 11 Stoic realizations people discover too late in life. 1. The quality of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, not the state of the world. The foundational stone upon which the entire edifice of Stoicism is built is the profound realization that our internal world, our faculty of judgment, is the sole sovereign of our happiness. Most people spend their lives in a frantic, exhausting pursuit of external things: wealth, reputation, the approval of others, perfect health, and favorable circumstances. They operate under the delusion that if they can just arrange the pieces on the board of life correctly, they will finally achieve a state of lasting peace and contentment, what the Stoics called eudaimonia. This is the great error that breeds perpetual anxiety, disappointment, and suffering. The Stoic masters, from Zeno of Citium teaching in the painted colonnade, Stoa Poikile, of Athens, to the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, writing in his tent on the war-torn Germanic frontier, taught the opposite. They understood that the world outside our minds is, by its very nature, chaotic, unpredictable, and largely indifferent to our personal desires. Fortune is a fickle mistress. Wealth can be lost, health can fail, reputations can be ruined by a single rumor, and loved ones can be taken from us. To stake our inner peace on these externals is to build our house upon the sand. The true revolution in living begins when we turn our attention inward. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations, constantly reminded himself of this truth. Our life is what our thoughts make it. And again, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is not a call for passive resignation, but for a radical shift in focus. The Stoic does not ignore the external world. Rather, they understand that the only thing that can truly harm them is their own reaction to it, their own assent to a negative judgment. Consider an event. You lose your job. The non-Stoic mind immediately judges this as a catastrophe. This is terrible. It thinks, my life is ruined, I am a failure. This judgment, this story we tell ourselves, is what produces the feelings of panic, shame, and despair. The event itself, the termination of employment, is neutral. It is simply a fact. The Stoic, practicing what is known as the discipline of judgment, would pause before assenting to this initial panicked impression. They would analyze it rationally. I have lost my source of income. This is a dispreferred indifferent, they might reason. It is an obstacle, but it does not touch my character, my virtue, or my capacity for reason. My core self is unharmed. This is now an opportunity to practice resilience, to seek new paths, to demonstrate my resourcefulness. This inner dialogue is the work of a lifetime. It is the practice of building what the Stoics called the inner citadel, a fortress of the mind that no external circumstance, no matter how dire, can breach. The world will constantly hurl events at us: insults, betrayals, losses, illnesses. These are the arrows. The non-Stoic allows these arrows to pierce their soul because they have internalized the judgment that these things are bad. The Stoic, however, understands that the arrows only have power if they allow them to. By controlling their thoughts and judgments, they effectively become invincible. Life ceases to be a series of reactions to external stimuli and becomes a conscious, deliberate expression of a rational and tranquil mind. The ultimate realization is this: it is not what happens to you, but how you think about what happens to you, that defines your experience. This is the only sphere where you have complete and total control, and therefore it is the only place to invest your quest for a good life. 2. The greatest source of human suffering is the failure to distinguish what is in our control from what is not. This principle, known as the Stoic Dichotomy of Control, is perhaps the most practical and immediately applicable tool in the entire Stoic arsenal. The philosopher Epictetus, a former slave who rose to become one of the most respected teachers of his time, begins his famous Enchiridion, or handbook, with this very concept, stating it with absolute clarity: some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, property, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions. To learn this lesson late in life is to look back upon decades of wasted energy, anxiety, and frustration. Think of the countless hours spent worrying about what others think of us. Reputation, not in our control. Agonizing over a past mistake that cannot be changed. The past, not in our control. Fearing a future illness, the body, not fully in our control, or becoming enraged by traffic or the political climate, actions of others and external systems, not in our control. This is the default state of the untrained mind, a constant, futile struggle against reality itself. Epictetus's genius was to provide a simple, powerful filter for all of life's challenges. Before reacting to any situation, the practicing Stoic asks, is this in my control or not in my control? If it is not in your control, then accepting it as such is the only rational path. To desire that things not in your control should be otherwise is, in the words of Marcus Aurelius, to be like a dog barking at a stone, an act of pure, energy-draining futility. This does not mean you should not prefer certain outcomes. A Stoic certainly prefers to be healthy rather than sick, wealthy rather than poor. These are termed preferred indifference. They are preferred because they can make life more convenient, but they are indifferent to our core happiness and virtue. Our eudaimonia does not depend on them. A Stoic can be just as virtuous, just as tranquil, just as fulfilled in sickness as in health, because their well-being is sourced internally. The true work, and the only area where effort is fruitful, lies in what is within our control: our judgments, our intentions, our responses, our character. You cannot control whether someone insults you, but you have absolute control over whether you choose to be insulted. The insult is an external event. The feeling of being offended is an internal judgment that you have the power to withhold. You cannot control a global economic downturn, but you have absolute control over your response: to despair and complain, or to adapt, economize, and seek new opportunities with courage and resourcefulness. Mastering this distinction is the key to unlocking what the Stoics called apatheia, which is not apathy in the modern sense, but a state of tranquil clarity, free from disturbing passions. It is the peace that comes from focusing your energy exclusively on your own garden, your thoughts, words, and deeds, while letting the rest of the world unfold as it will, according to the grand, rational order of the cosmos, or logos. By ceasing to fight unwinnable battles with externals, you conserve your energy for the only battle that matters: the cultivation of your own character. It is the realization that your freedom is not determined by your circumstances, but by your recognition of where your true power lies. 3. Every obstacle you face is not a barrier, but a path to demonstrate virtue. One of the most potent and transformative ideas in Stoicism is the art of turning adversity on its head. Where most people see problems, setbacks, and frustrations, the Stoic sees raw material for the practice of virtue. This concept is most famously articulated by Marcus Aurelius, who wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This single phrase encapsulates a revolutionary mindset. The problem itself contains the solution. This is not simple optimism or a platitude about finding silver linings. It is a disciplined, philosophical technique. The Stoics believed that the highest good in life, the very purpose of our existence, is to live virtuously, that is, to express courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom. The universe, in its wisdom, constantly provides us with opportunities to practice these virtues. A difficult boss is not merely a nuisance, he is a training partner for your patience and temperance. A sudden financial loss is not a disaster. It is a canvas upon which to paint your resilience and courage. A betrayal by a friend is not just a source of pain, it is a test of your capacity for forgiveness and justice. The Roman philosopher Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, speaks of this frequently. He compared a person who has never faced adversity to a prize fighter who has never entered the ring. "You are unfortunate in my judgment, for you have never been unfortunate," he wrote. "You have passed through life without an antagonist. No one can know what you are capable of, not even yourself." For Seneca, hardship was not something to be avoided but a necessary crucible for forging character. It reveals our strengths and exposes our weaknesses, allowing us to grow stronger, just as a muscle grows stronger only when placed under stress. This perspective shifts our entire relationship with life's difficulties. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the Stoic asks, "How can I use this to become a better person?" This question transforms you from a passive victim of fate into an active agent in your own moral development. The power is reclaimed. The external event, which is outside your control, becomes a catalyst for an internal action, which is entirely within your control. This mindset is encapsulated in the modern phrase, "The obstacle is the way," the title of a book by Ryan Holiday that brought this Stoic principle to a new generation. It requires a three-step process. Perception. Control your perception of the event. Do not add the judgment, "This is bad." See it for what it is, a challenging circumstance. Action. Find the opportunity within the obstacle. What action can you take right now that aligns with virtue? If you are stuck in traffic, you can practice patience. If you receive a critical review, you can practice humility and seek the kernel of truth within it. Will. Accept what you cannot change. The outcome is never guaranteed, but you can always control your will to act virtuously and to accept the result with equanimity. To learn this late in life is to realize how many opportunities for growth were missed, mistaken for mere misfortune. To learn it now is to unlock a superpower, the ability to alchemize any situation, no matter how negative it appears, into gold, the gold of a stronger, wiser, and more virtuous character. 4. To contemplate your mortality is not to be morbid, but to appreciate the present moment. In modern culture, death is often a taboo subject, something to be ignored, sanitized, and pushed to the furthest corners of our minds. The Stoics, however, took the opposite approach. They believed that the regular, sober contemplation of our own mortality, a practice known as Memento Mori, remember you will die, is an essential ingredient for a joyful and meaningful life. It sounds paradoxical, but the logic is impeccable. Seneca, in his essay On the Shortness of Life, argues that life is not inherently short, but that we make it short through wasted time. We procrastinate, we chase trivialities, we live as if we have an infinite supply of tomorrows. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it, he writes. The constant awareness of death is the antidote to this wastefulness. When you truly internalize the fact that your time is finite and the end is unknown, you stop squandering the present moment. Every day, every hour, every interaction becomes infused with a new preciousness. Marcus Aurelius, arguably the most powerful man in the world during his reign, filled his private journal with reminders of his own impermanence. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think, he admonished himself. This wasn't a source of depression for him, it was a source of focus and urgency. It was a filter to separate the essential from the trivial. Faced with a choice, the Stoic asks, if this were my last day on earth, Is this how I would choose to spend my time? Is this argument worth having? Is this grudge worth holding? Is this fear worth indulging? The practice of Memento Mori accomplishes several key things. First, it clarifies your priorities. The awareness of death strips away the non-essential. The pursuit of fame, the accumulation of superfluous possessions, the nursing of petty grievances, all of these fade into insignificance when viewed against the backdrop of mortality. What remains is what truly matters: your relationships, your character, and the contribution you make to the world. Second, it cultivates gratitude. By remembering that everything and everyone you love can be taken away, you appreciate them more profoundly in the present. You don't take your health, your family, or the simple beauty of a sunrise for granted, because you know it is all temporary. Third, it fosters courage. Many of our fears are rooted in a fear of loss or a fear of failure. Contemplating the ultimate loss, the loss of life itself, puts lesser fears into perspective. As Seneca noted, "He who has learned to die has unlearned how to be a slave." Once you have made peace with death, you are free to live bravely and authentically, unconstrained by the fear of what others might think or what minor setbacks might occur. To live a life avoiding the thought of death is to live in a state of shallow distraction. You are like a tourist rushing through a museum, glancing at masterpieces without ever truly seeing them, because you assume you can always come back tomorrow. The Stoic, through Memento Mori, understands that the museum is closing soon. They therefore pause, they look deeply, they savor the beauty and meaning of each exhibit, each moment. To learn this too late is to arrive at the end of your life and realize you never truly lived at all. 5. You are a citizen of the cosmos, and your duty is to your fellow human beings. In an era often defined by tribalism, nationalism, and division, the Stoic concept of cosmopolitanism offers a radical and healing alternative. The Stoics were arguably the first true globalists. Zeno, the founder of the school, when asked where he came from, would reply, "I am a citizen of the world, cosmopolites." This was not a mere slogan, it was a core philosophical doctrine known as sympathia, the belief that all things are mutually interconnected and woven together in a single, unified cosmic web. Marcus Aurelius expressed this beautifully. What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. He understood that human beings are fundamentally social creatures, designed by nature. Logos, to work together for the common good. To act selfishly, to harm others, to be indifferent to the suffering of your community, was to act against your own nature. It was an act of self-mutilation, like a hand deciding to cut itself off from the body. This perspective radically reorients our sense of responsibility. Your duties extend beyond your immediate family or your nation-state. They extend to every fellow human being, simply by virtue of your shared humanity and your shared place in the cosmos. Hierocles, a 2nd century Stoic, provided a practical visualization for this concept. He described a series of concentric circles. The innermost circle is the self. The next circle contains your immediate family. Then extended family, then fellow townspeople, then fellow countrymen. And finally, the outermost circle encompasses the entire human race. The task of the Stoic, Hierocles said, is to constantly work on drawing the outer circles inward, to treat strangers as friends and foreigners as countrymen. This is the basis of Stoic justice. Justice, for the Stoics, is not merely a matter of laws and punishments. It is the active virtue of ensuring the fair distribution of what is good and necessary for the flourishing of the human community. It means treating others with respect, kindness, and fairness, not because you expect something in return, but because it is the right thing to do, the rational and natural way for a human being to behave. When you are tempted to anger, gossip, or selfishness, the Stoic reminds you to zoom out. Think of the person who has wronged you not as an isolated enemy, but as a fellow member of the human family, a person who is likely acting out of ignorance or a flawed understanding of what is good. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Men exist for the sake of one another. Teach them then, or bear with them. Your first duty is to try and educate them with patience and kindness. If that fails, your duty is to endure their flaws without letting it corrupt your own character." To learn this lesson late in life is to look back on a trail of broken relationships, unnecessary conflicts, and missed opportunities for connection. It is to realize that the us versus them mentality that may have guided your actions was a destructive illusion. To embrace cosmopolitanism is to understand that we are all leaves on the same tree, waves in the same ocean. Your own good is inextricably linked to the common good. Your purpose is not just to perfect your own inner citadel, but to be a productive and helpful member of the global human city. 6. True freedom is not the ability to do what you want, but the wisdom to want what is right. The modern conception of freedom is often one of license, the unconstrained ability to satisfy any impulse, pursue any desire, and live without rules or obligations. For the Stoics, this was not freedom, but a form of slavery. A person driven by their every craving for pleasure, their every fear of pain, their every angry impulse, is not free. They are a puppet, and their strings are being pulled by external events and internal passions. True Stoic freedom, or eleutheria, is an internal state. It is the liberation of the mind from the tyranny of irrational judgments, unexamined desires, and destructive emotions. It is the state achieved when your ruling faculty, your reason, is firmly in command. A free person, in the Stoic sense, is one who aligns their will with nature and reason. They desire only what is virtuous and within their control, and they are averse only to what is vicious and within their control. Epictetus, having been a slave in the literal sense, had a uniquely powerful perspective on freedom. He knew that one could be in chains and yet be perfectly free in one's mind, and conversely, one could be an emperor and yet be a complete slave to ambition, fear, and pleasure. His teachings are a guide to achieving this inner liberation. The key is to relentlessly examine your impressions. When a desire for a luxury car arises, the free mind does not simply chase it. It asks, is this truly good? Is owning this essential for my eudaimonia? Or is this just a preferred indifferent that society has taught me to crave? When a feeling of anger toward a colleague arises, the free mind does not lash out. It asks, is this rage rational? Does it serve the common good? Or is it a passion born of a mistaken judgment about what has been done to me? This process of self-examination leads to what the Stoics called the discipline of desire. It involves training yourself to want what is inevitable and what is good. The Stoics taught the principle of amor fati, a love of fate. This is not passive resignation. It is an active, joyful acceptance of the fabric of reality. It means not just tolerating what happens, but embracing it as if you had chosen it yourself, trusting that it is all part of the rational unfolding of the cosmos, logos. To wish for reality to be different is to be in a constant state of internal conflict. To love what is to be in a state of perfect harmony and peace. Therefore, the person who has trained their mind to want what is right and to accept what is real is the only one who is truly free. They are not disappointed because they do not desire things outside of their control. They are not fearful because they accept the hand that fate deals them. They are not enslaved by pleasure because their joy comes from the practice of virtue itself, not from fleeting external sensations. Most people spend their lives chasing a false freedom, the freedom of the unchained animal. They believe that more money, more power, or more leisure will set them free, only to find that these things often bring new anxieties and new forms of bondage. To learn the Stoic lesson of freedom late in life is to realize that the key to your own cell was in your pocket the entire time. It was never about changing your circumstances, but about mastering your soul. 7. Silence and mindful speech are marks of a powerful mind. In a world saturated with noise, hot takes, and constant communication, the Stoic virtue of restrained and purposeful speech is more relevant than ever. The Stoics understood that our words are a direct reflection of our inner state. Hasty, emotional, or excessive speech is the sign of a disordered mind, one that has not mastered the discipline of assent. A tranquil and rational mind, by contrast, expresses itself with precision, care, and often with silence. Zeno of Citium is famously quoted as saying, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more than we say." This pithy statement captures a deep philosophical truth. Listening is an act of learning and understanding. It is an act of humility, acknowledging that others may have knowledge or perspectives we lack. Speaking, on the other hand, is an act of proclamation. To speak without first listening and thinking is to proclaim one's own unexamined judgments to the world. Epictetus provided clear guidance on this practice. Let silence be your general rule, or say only what is necessary, and in few words, he advised. He was not advocating for anti-social behavior, but for an end to frivolous, malicious, or vain chatter. He specifically warned against talking at length about common topics like gladiators, horse races, or food and drink, and especially about other people, apportioning blame or praise. Why? Because such talk is a distraction from the true work of a philosopher, the examination and improvement of one's own character. Every moment spent in idle gossip is a moment not spent in self-reflection. The power of this principle lies in its connection to the inner citadel. When you speak, you are externalizing a thought. If that thought is an unexamined emotional reaction to an event, you are giving that event power over you. You are reinforcing the harmful judgment. For example, if someone cuts you off in traffic and you immediately curse them and complain about them to your passenger, you are cementing the judgment that this event was a grave injustice worthy of anger. The Stoic, in contrast, might remain silent or say nothing more than, "That was an aggressive maneuver." They refuse to assent to the impression that they have been harmed, and by controlling their speech, they maintain their inner tranquility. Furthermore, when you speak less, your words carry more weight. A person who is constantly talking is often tuned out. Their words become part of the background noise. But a person who is known to be thoughtful and reserved, who only speaks when they have something meaningful to say, commands attention. Their words are valued because they are understood to be the product of careful consideration, not impulse. To learn this lesson late in life is to regret the countless words spoken in anger that damaged relationships, the hours wasted in meaningless chatter, and the opportunities missed to simply be present and listen. To practice it now is to cultivate a mind that is clear, focused, and strong. It is to understand that true power is not found in being the loudest voice in the room, but in having a mind so well ordered that it does not need to speak to prove its worth.